It is 9:30. It's KCIM, and it's KCIM Sports Rewind on the air. The guys got to save the conversation for on the air. We got to talking about the college football playoffs, and you guys are chatting away, and I'm like, whoa. We got a half an hour to fill here.
Yes.
But I asked you what the big headline out of the last weekend was, because it was an insane weekend for college football.
Yep.
Sports Director Jeff Blankman, Casey Miners, Assistant Sports Director, and me. I'm John, the parsley on the side of the plate that you just ignore. What's your big take on the weekend, though? I mean, coming out of it, to me, it was Alabama losing to Oklahoma, and just how far that program has fallen so quickly.
And being dominated on the road by Oklahoma. Got a chance to watch that one. To me, there's a few headlines, I guess. You got, the SEC and the upsets that happened there. Are they now only going to get 3 teams instead of 4 into the playoff picture, into the playoffs? Because right now it looks like they're only going to get 3 instead of 4. So that opens the door. You had the craziness in the Big 12 of 9 schools now, eligible still for the conference championship game in a 4-way tie for first place. Iowa winning with a backup quarterback, Nebraska getting to a bowl game so we don't have to hear the stupid trivia question anymore about who's the team with the power for the longest streak with that. And then
was it since 2016?
2016, okay. And then as a Nebraska fan, to sweep Wisconsin twice in the same year, a program that we hadn't hardly beaten as good as the volleyball program's been in Lincoln, to sweep them twice. We swept them on Saturday night, and stuff. So, those are things that kind of jumped off the board at me.
That didn't even make a ripple in my weekend. How about you, Casey?
For volleyball fans, it did. Not just for Nebraska volleyball fans, but for volleyball fans, it did.
I'd say just for Nebraska volleyball fans. I'd be willing to go on that one. So,
and there's more around here than you realize. Most of the kids around here will tell you, I hate Nebraska, and then you'll start talking Nebraska volleyball, and that's their favorite team.
Yeah. How about the Indiana-Ohio State game? Anything you didn't expect out of that one?
I expected the score to be what it was. I watched the game, and Indiana just kept hurting themselves.
Yeah. I was hoping that Indiana would stay tighter than that, only because of the concern of they had the worst weakest schedule out of all of the Power 4 teams, and I was afraid that the committee would say, now they're not good enough to be into the postseason, into the playoff with just the one loss. But I think that they hung in just enough that I think they'll still be in the playoff picture. So,
I mean, and if Michigan pulls off an upset, they're right back in the Big Ten. They're right in the Big Ten championship game.
They need somebody to beat Penn State, too, because Penn State's ahead of them. Mm-hmm. So they need Penn State to lose, and they need Ohio State to lose to have a chance to get into that Big Ten championship game.
When's the last time Michigan went under the radar? They've kind of been that way throughout the whole year since they got just rocked by Texas.
Yeah,
they've been kind of like, just forget about Michigan. I guess they're done. They're not done.
Yeah, well,
I think they're gonna be done as soon as they play Ohio State.
Yeah, they're not very good. I will say this, and I'm sure I'll get some pushback on it, but I think there's 4 really good teams. I still think Indiana's really good. I don't think they're national championship good, but I think they're playoff caliber. And then I think there's a huge drop in the Big Ten after that. I think you got Iowa and Michigan and maybe Nebraska. It depends on what week it is, but and there's a huge drop between them top 4 to the rest of the league, and then there's a lot of average to bad. Mm-hmm. In that conference, it's carried right now by 4 teams. It's what Big Ten and Big 12 people used to always say about the SEC. Well, they're carried by Alabama and Georgia, and that's it. Well, now the Big Ten's carried by 4 good teams, and everybody else kind of average.
With Oregon being number 1, I really don't know if I would classify them as the most dominant team though this year in college football. I don't think we've seen a one team each week where you're like, okay, that team's going to win a national title, like what it was with Michigan and what's been with some of the Georgia and Alabama teams in the past.
Yep.
I think that 12-team playoff could be really good this year, and you got to bring it all every night if you want to win, because you could have a 2-loss SEC team on the road knock off an Oregon or an Ohio State.
Right. Agreed.
So.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the Big 12 gets in, what the ACC gets in.
The Big
looks
12's
like
going to get one.
Yeah, maybe two now, depending. But yeah, it's not looking real good for them. But
Big 12 is looking right now one, and that is Arizona State.
Right.
That is in the rankings right now. So let me ask you this question about the Big 12. Who was the bigger shock to you? Colorado getting rocked by Kansas?
No.
As Kansas might be the best team in the Big 12.
I think they're the best team in the Big 12 at this moment. Absolutely.
At BYU or Arizona State. I mean, that's the great story that Arizona State is, and Colorado just disappointing in that big game.
Yeah, I was glad to see Kansas win that. I know a lot of people don't like Colorado because of Deion. I don't like Colorado because I'm a Nebraska fan, and we've hated him since the day I was born. I know I'm going to make Big 12 fans mad at this, but that conference is just so average. I've got some diehard Big 12 fans I talk to on a regular basis, and I'm like, you look at it this way: Colorado is tied for your conference lead, and Nebraska is in the middle of the pack, the bottom of the pack in the Big 10, and we flat dominated Colorado, and they didn't even deserve to be on the field with us. Mm-hmm. That just tells you where that conference is at, And one of my diehard Iowa State fans that I talk to on a regular basis, he's like, it's going to be embarrassing if it's Colorado, Arizona State, or BYU. If two of those three get into the championship game, it's going to be embarrassing for the holdovers. The Iowa States, the Texas Techs, the Baylors. You got two teams in the conference championship game that have been there either 1 or 2 years. And stuff that doesn't say much about the schools that have been around the league.
Yeah, I was going to say the stalwarts of the Big 12 aren't making any noise there. Yeah. Iowa State does have a chance to make the Big 12 championship game.
And I hope they get there.
K-State.
Yep, I hope they get there. Mm-hmm. So I know Casey doesn't want it. He's a Hawkeye fan. But I'd be nice to see them get there.
We'll see about that one. It's Saturday night. The Farmageddon game, you never know what's going to happen there. But another legend of college football bowing out, Mark Farley out at UNI. After what's been a very mediocre run by UNI. They used to be a real power in FCS.
Yeah.
I mean, Farley was it.
Yeah.
And, they have fallen a ways and just it's been a slow decline, but there's been no chance to really reverse it through the years.
Yeah, and it sounds like the money's not coming in from the boosters right now. So that's, I think, part of what led to maybe the change.
I also think it's another coach that doesn't like the way college football's going right now, and doesn't want to adapt to the changing landscape of NIL and the transfer portal and stuff like that.
And if you don't want to change, you might as well get out. It ain't gonna change.
Yeah, I was going to say that right now in the Missouri Valley, you got North Dakota State, who has probably sent out as many transfers as they brought in.
Right.
But so is SDSU, South Dakota State University, and now USD is doing the same thing. They've got a number of Iowa State transfers, including Aiden Bauman, their quarterback, who was at Iowa State. Wasn't going to get a chance to play behind Rocco Beck, so he's I'll just transfer out, and he's been playing great. And they won a share of the Missouri Valley Conference this week, and number 4 seed in the FCS for my Yotes. So I had a great weekend, man. My Vikings won, Iowa State won, USD Coyotes won. It was a perfect weekend.
My weekend almost perfect. There was one team that could have lost, that could have made it better, but I won't say who. Most people probably know who. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I could have had a perfect weekend. So, but no, I go back to the Terry Allen days back in the 80s with UNI and how good they were then and, through the 90s and into the 2000s. But, they've certainly fallen off here in the last probably 5 to 10 years from where they were.
Yeah, it's been something to see that because I don't know, are their facilities keeping up with anybody there? Because everybody else, the Dakota teams, have just poured money into their facilities.
Yeah, and it's harder for UNI to have that kind of money and everything to be able to do that. And I don't think they have. So I think everything I'm hearing through kind of some back channels is that there was some conversations that some changes needed to be made, for money to start pouring back into that program. And we'll see if the changes that are made are what the boosters that have the money that will donate are willing to do.
So, all right, so USA Today came out with their football playoff predictions. Of course, they've got Oregon. They got Georgia as the SEC champion. Miami as ACC champion. Arizona State as the Big 12 champion. But Then you got teams Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Does Notre Dame belong in the National Football Playoff?
Besides their slip up against Northern Illinois, they've looked good. That's all I'm going to say. I know people are upset about that, but besides their slip up against Northern Illinois, they've looked good.
Yeah, they probably belong. I will just say this. I wish that they wouldn't let them in and just say, you know what, until you actually get into a conference, we're not letting you into the postseason. This whole thing of your Notre Dame and you deserve anything special needs to fade away. So.
Indiana and Tennessee are also in there.
Yep.
A lot of folks are saying Tennessee might be a dark horse.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's really good. I do. It'll be interesting to see this last week, how it plays out, and I'm interested to see where the rankings that are the official ones, that come out tonight and what they have and who's in there. So
the Texas and Texas A&M game in the SEC on Saturday will determine a lot of how many teams I think get in for the SEC that aren't in the championship game because, even if Texas loses, they're ranked so high, do you take them out with one of their losses, with both of their losses being to ranked opponents?
Right.
What does that do for Tennessee?
I doubt they would fall far enough unless they would just get obliterated in that game. But does Texas A&M slide into the mix, or who else? Who's the fourth? Yeah. Who's the fourth? But if Texas
A&M wins, they're into the SEC championship game, and then if they beat Georgia, they're automatically
right. Yeah.
So then, what do you do with Georgia, who's now then got three losses? What do you do with Texas with 2 losses, but they didn't get the SEC championship game? And what do you do with Tennessee?
Right.
And then the last 2 teams, SMU and Boise State.
Yeah.
Do you think they belong in the championship?
I want Boise State to go on a run.
You want them to go on a run, but did they play the competition to be in the top 12?
Their lone loss is a 3-point loss to Oregon.
Oregon on the road early in the year. Yeah. So, but
they played the schedule that they had. That's all.
Absolutely. And the tough thing is you don't know if those schools belong until you give them a chance to play. And see if they belong. The one matchup that they had to prove whether or not they could play with those type of teams, they showed early in the year that they could by almost knocking off Oregon on the road. And for SMU, I know that they're a nobody in college football today, but they've probably been the best team in the ACC. Most of the year quietly, maybe even better than Miami. Miami had all the hubbub before the season started, but they may be as good or better than Miami right now. So.
We'll see. So it's going to be interesting when it all shakes out. If SMU still stays in the top 12, Boise State kind of seems like they're destined to beat the number 12 seed. They're going to put them there just for the mere fact that they've got the one loss to Oklahoma or to Oregon there, but. That's the way it's shaking out now. I think they come out later on tonight, don't they?
Yeah, it should be like 5-6 o'clock tonight when they'll be released. Yeah. So. All
right, you ready for your trivia question this week?
Sure.
All right, let's see. We got Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert at Pro Football. They faced off last night, Los Angeles. Both QBs have at least 100 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns since 2020. There are 3 others, and nobody named Pat Mahomes in that category. All of them play in the AFC.
So what's the numbers they have?
They have 100 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns since 2020.
Okay.
So Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, 3 other AFC quarterbacks.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen's one. Anybody?
Got to think of the teams in the AFC here real quick.
Deshaun Watson, would he be in that mix?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's been drubbed out of Cleveland deservedly so.
He would have been a guy that I thought might would have had enough of the rushing touchdowns.
Would Trevor Lawrence be one?
Nope, not Trevor Lawrence. He hasn't had 10. I don't know. I guess I'm done.
Has he had 10 passing touchdowns?
One guy has made a lot of noise in the AFC. The other guy's a newbie to the AFC this year.
Aaron Rodgers. No, not Aaron Rodgers.
Not Aaron Rodgers, no. Not 10 rushing touchdowns for him, I guarantee you. Yeah. Guaranteed he's got way over 100 touchdowns through the air. But anyway, he just signed with a team. Well, actually signed in the AFC a couple of years ago, then got traded to another AFC team.
I'm drawing a blank on all the AFC teams
too.
Right now.
Yeah,
they're both in the same division. I
got to run through them. Would Tua be one?
No, not Tua.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably been concussed too many times.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
They both
I don't follow the
AFC
NFL well
North.
enough to
AFC North.
Okay.
We got Josh Allen.
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson is one of them, yeah.
Okay.
Justin Fields.
No, Justin Fields.
He probably hasn't thrown 100 touchdown passes
Another
yet.
team in that AFC North with a pretty good quarterback that you're missing. Who would that be? Iowa roots?
Somebody that's listening right now is screaming at us. I know they are. I know they are.
Yeah, I don't follow the
gotta think
NFL
of
enough to have any real thoughts.
I'm drawing a blank.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
Okay.
Burrow.
I wouldn't have thought. I would not have thought the 20 touchdowns.
I wouldn't have thought the rushing touchdowns with
10
Joe
rushing.
Burrow.
Yeah, the 10 rushing touchdowns. I wouldn't have thought that with him.
Yeah, you don't see him as a big running quarterback.
Yeah.
Josh Allen was the one that immediately came to mind. Patrick Mahomes came to mind right away, but he's not part of that either.
No, but yeah, Joe Burrow, and for the people that didn't know, from Ames, Iowa. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And probably a lot of like quarterback sneaks in there for a touchdown here and there. But yeah, Russell Wilson was a running quarterback.
Yeah,
so,
he was.
He definitely had more than that with Seattle. So
Yeah, I forgot that he was even in Pittsburgh.
That's your trivia question of the week. We got more to talk about.
That
Girls
was a tough one.
That was kind of a hard one. A little bit, anyway. I haven't had to give you guys that much help in one for a while. I don't think you've not gotten a trivia question eventually.
Right.
On that one. So they chalk one up for me.
Well, we have a full 30 minutes to do it sometimes.
We've got about 14 more minutes to talk some local sports. That's on the way next.
As the athletes at your house prepare for hard work and fun of the season, remember that St. Anthony Rehab Services provides physical therapy for any sports injury that may sideline your member of the team. Sports injuries can plague kids of all ages and keep them from playing the sport they love. Athletes will be under the direct supervision of a certified and licensed healthcare professional in the newly renovated sports performance facility. If an injury is keeping your athlete out of the game, call St. Anthony Rehabilitation Services at 794-5000 for sports injury and treatment rehab.
It is KCIM Sports Rewind. Sports Director Jeff Blankman, Casey Miners, and myself, I'm John Ryan. Let's talk a little local sports. You just came in with some news, Jeff. The Audubon and Exira Elkhorn Kimballton. Apparently the sharing not going well.
Yeah. Last year they shared girls basketball and then track on the girls' side of thing, along with tennis and golf, and everything went well. And then everybody knows the story of softball. And
I'd say softball really was the team that stood out.
Yes, yep. They make the state championship game, push Van Meter to the very end, and almost walk out of there with a state championship. Now they are sharing basketball this winter. They'll share the spring sports again, but the Audubon School Board had voted maybe 3 months ago, I think it was,
to continue the sharing.
To continue the sharing for softball, but there had been a group pushing for no down at the Exira in Kimballton. They tabled it until this month in the school board meeting, and they held the school board meeting last night, and they've decided not to continue the sharing, at least for softball, which I think will probably negatively impact the basketball and the spring sports, probably after the end of this year. From what I'm gathering is that they probably will not share those anymore after this. And
it would be awfully hard to go back into the other sports and say, okay, we're going to continue to share these, just not softball. What's the different thing about softball?
I wish I knew, not living down there and stuff. I've tried to talk to people on both sides, and you can't seem to, put a complete finger on it. I think part of it was that Audubon got a lot of the credit for the run that they had in softball, and they didn't play any games down at the Elkhorn Kimballton facility for home games for Exira. But I think part of it is you just have communities that with adults that haven't gotten along for a long time, and they don't want to combine, and they don't want to be together. And the sad thing is talking to the girls this summer, they loved it. They wanted to be together. They wanted to continue to share. You even had girls that graduated this last year that were a part of the combination that spoke last night at the school board meeting that said how much fun it is. Of course, you're going to have some kids that are currently there right now that, based off of their mom and dad not wanting the schools to combine, that are going to say they don't want it to combine, that maybe did want it to combine prior to this, it's sad. I'm just going to be flat honest. I love covering good sports, and that was really good sports with them combined.
I just don't know how you can let a team that went to the state championship a season ago had a chance to win it, was right there. And, now this year going into it, can split a team up like that.
Yeah.
You are on the verge of, they have a really good coach, a verge of being, it could have been a powerhouse in softball, with
and they're
the type of players you have.
They're really good coaches now leaving due to all of the are we sharing, aren't we sharing. She's resigned and is going to be moving on and taking a different job somewhere else.
Well, I'll say this, as just kind of devil's advocate in all this. If you're a school district and you've got enough interest to field your own teams, and there's enough girls that want to do it, then I think that district owes those girls a chance.
I agree 100%. Agree 100%.
But if that's not the case,
right,
then there's a lot of explaining to do as to why you're doing this.
Yeah, and that's the things that we don't know. Did the numbers jump on both sides now, or especially in the Exira-Kimballton side, to be able to host their own
one year
team?
Huge success. Did that spark all of that? I mean, this quickly before the next season even begins?
Right.
How can you tell?
It could have. So until I can have some conversations with the people on that end that were not in favor of going together, I don't know. I'm just speaking as a guy that covered him. I'm disappointed because I will say this. Riley Miller goes to school at Exira-Kimballton. She was our softball player of the year. They're not going to be combined next summer. We're not going to be covering Exira-Kimballton. I'm not going to get to cover Riley Miller. And I love watching Riley Miller play. As a person that loves high school sports and loves to cover high school sports, the fact that I'm not going to get to cover Riley Miller, pitching this summer, and Taryn Peterson at shortstop, the two girls that are coming back off of that team from Exira-Kimballton, it's a sad day for me because I loved watching both of them two play.
I will say the numbers are up, and they feel like that they have enough kids to play, then they should do it. But how many of those girls are ready to play varsity softball?
Right. Yep.
That's kind of the way I see it. And are they going to be able to compete? At the varsity level, you might have the numbers to have field a team, but are they ready to play? Varsity softball?
Yeah, and we see a lot of school districts right now that are doing that. They're holding on and they're putting teams out on the field or court or wherever you want to say it, and they're not competing. But the kids are getting the opportunity to play, which is what high school sports is about. But now you're seeing numbers dwindle in a lot of sports, and there's talks of, well, the kids don't, especially in basketball, that who wants to play when you're getting beat 86-12 every week?
Yeah.
So do you continue to do that so that those kids have that opportunity, and then they don't want to have that opportunity and they don't go out because nobody has fun getting beat 86-12? Or if you're in softball, if you're getting beat 14-0 every week, or you can't compete, is it still baseball? I don't care what sport it is. Is it viable to continue to do that?
Is there enough interest in like a JV squad or something? If they had to, because a lot of times in softball, especially, you'll find 8th graders playing on the varsity level on a regular basis.
Yes,
it's because of the numbers.
Because of the numbers,
and so if they, if they could put some solid numbers out there and have a team of just the younger girls playing together for a year or two, rather than forcing them onto the varsity squad, that might be the best situation for everybody.
Right.
But again, it's all comes down to the school boards and what decisions they make.
Yeah. So, and like I said, not having attended the meeting last night, not knowing exactly, what was said and what was debated, I just know that there was some kids that had been on last year's team that were from Exira that spoke up and said that they think it was a great thing and that they wanted it to continue, but the school board decided that that's not the direction they want to go. And
is anybody going to open and roll?
Right. We wish them the absolute best of luck. We're going to continue to cover this winter with the combination and then in the spring, and then, we'll look and see, but probably more than likely it's difficult for us to add a whole nother school to what we're doing. We're already covering a ton of things and stuff. So it's probably more than likely not going to get that opportunity to pick them up here in the summer. So
girls basketball tipped off last night. We had a couple of games around the areas. Jeff, you're going to cover one tonight. Kemper girls down at the Coon Rapids Baird girls. So kind of a slower start to the winter sports season. Thanksgiving's here, and we'll only have a couple of games in. I mean, literally about a handful of games.
Yeah, and usually like ESAC would have played Friday night against Storm Lake, but they wanted to push that game back into later in the year, so they're going to play that in December this year. which I think, the kids kind of was up there for media day the other day. They're like, this is just a lot of practice with no game. But when you talk to the coaches, it's like it was tough trying to go out and play a game with, 4 days, 5 days of practice, and then you go play, and then you sit for another 2 weeks before you go play again. So they kind of rearranged the schedule, which I think will be beneficial. So, yeah, tonight's kind of, I wouldn't even say tonight's a full night. We have 4 teams in action in 3 games. Last night we had 3 teams in action in 3 games. The sad thing to say about last night probably would be the one theme seemed to be really slow starts for all 3 of our teams. They were all down, fairly big at the end of the first quarter in all 3 of those games, and all 3 of them ended up losing those games last night.
Kemper, a tough test, when you
number one
when you bring in the number 1 team in a class that's above you, it's going to be a difficult thing, and I think that that loss is only going to help Kemper.
Yeah.
When you play a team of that caliber, you can only get better. Just with the way they play, the physicality and stuff like that, it's going to help Kemper in the long run, I feel like.
Yeah, agreed 100%. So if you're going to do that, go out and play that early and kind of see where you're at. Now you know the things that you need to work on, and they'll be tested again tonight because, Coon not ranked, but, probably sitting right outside of the rankings in 1A, and they're going to be a really good team this year, and they're going to put the defensive pressure on. And so I think that's going to be a good matchup. If it's anywhere near what last year's game was,
came down to the last second,
and Breely Clayberg hit a shot to win it by 1 for Coon Rapids Bayard. Yeah, so.
And the Carroll girls going to see their first action traveling over to Webster City.
They should roll tonight. Webster City's been down for several years, and doesn't look like things probably on the way up over there. So, hopefully Carroll can go over and kind of look good tonight, because I think they've got a chance to be, really, really good this year. Top 4 in that conference, or top 5 in that conference, and that tells you how special of a team they could possibly have this year. So,
okay. Sticking with girls basketball, any conference champion caliber teams in our area?
Coon, Exi-Roker, and Kimballton, probably both. I think we'll contend on the girls' side of things.
Coon Rapids Bayard and the Rolling Valley.
Yep, and Exi-Roker and Kimballton in the Rolling Valley. So
they're in the
Rolling Valley. Yep. So I would say those 2 probably are our best chances to be able to do it. I think South Central Calhoun will surprise people this year. They only have 6 girls out, but all 6 of them have experience from last year. So as long as they don't get only 6, yeah. As long as they don't get into foul trouble,
or anybody gets hurt,
or anybody gets hurt or sick or anything, yeah. There's going to be some hurdles. They're going to have to be in really good shape because they're going to play a ton of minutes. And
that's
stuff,
a lonely bench, boy. As a head coach, you got to figure.
Yeah,
it's hard to even practice.
It is
when you've only got 6 players, and there's a potential to add any more to your roster as the year goes on.
Yeah, and that's something I almost want to get, either a member of the association or the member of the union on with us someday here soon, and have that conversation, because you talk to coaches. We talked about the young kids that are having to see varsity time now, maybe before they're truly ready to see varsity. Well, you think about practice time. If you've got 11 kids out, you're starting 5. Might have some really good players in there, but are they even being pushed or challenged in practice by the younger kids that aren't ready to be at that level, that are having to practice against them? So then how do those kids get better, and how do you do practices when it's hard to get challenged in practice to get better? So is there anything the state can do to help with that, type of a thing? So
yeah, I don't know what they could possibly do in a lot of those circumstances. But
I know what I would think.
Just encourage more alignment with other teams.
Right.
More consolidation.
Yes. Or, allow former players that live in the area to come in if they're available to practice against them. Maybe not every day, but once or twice a week, you can bring in some college age type kids that still are active in the game to practice against them,
to help teach the game and grow the game
and grow the game. Yeah,
I think that's maybe why we've seen more scrimmages. I think than this off season of basketball, is because some of the teams that have those low numbers, it's technically a joint practice if you think about it, and like what the NFL does and stuff like that. So you can see people to push you, but I do agree, when you're at your regular practice, who do you have, somebody to push one of the really good athletes in the area when, they don't have somebody to do that.
You look at Exira and Kimballton girls this year, not a ton of numbers, but better numbers this year than last year. They went down and played Lewis Central, so they're listed as a 2A school, but technically it's 2 1A programs combined to make a 2A school, and they go play a 4A powerhouse, because they want to be challenged and they want to be pushed. So
I will say that as slow as the start has been for the winter sports season, it's going to be that fast coming out of the Thanksgiving break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did have wrestling.
It's going to be crazy busy.
Yeah, we did have wrestling on Saturday on the girls' side of things as well. Macy Rasmussen, we named her last week as one of our wrestlers to watch on the girls' side of things. Even though she's a freshman, she goes out and goes 3-0 and wins the championship at her weight class at the tournament she was at over the weekend up at West Monona. So a good start for some of our area wrestling girls on Saturday as well.
But it's just going to get busier from here. Of course, there's going to be that Thanksgiving break in there, so rest up. You guys are going to be busy for the rest of the winter sports season with bowling being added and everything else now. Yeah, it's just nonstop.
Yeah, see if I know anything about the sport of bowling. I know I can't bowl. I'm terrible. So,
well, you can't golf, but you cover that too.
Yeah,
so.
True.
All right, that's KCIM Sports Rewind for this week.